Something huge is happening in India right now. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar pivot. It's a fundamental shift away from just trying to manage water scarcity to actually manufacturing water on an industrial scale. This is the story of how India is literally turning its oceans into taps and its wastewater into a seriously valuable asset. Okay, let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to break it all down for you. First, we'll set the stage with the crisis that's forcing this massive change. Then we'll dive into the blue gold rush, the huge market boom it's created. After that, we'll look at the incredible new water factories popping up. We'll also explore what's next, the future frontiers of water use. And finally, we'll ask the tough questions about the real price of all this progress. All right, so first things first. To really get why this revolution is happening, you have to understand the immense pressure on India's water. And look, this isn't just about one bad monsoon. We're talking about a deep systemic challenge here. You know, this used to be a hypothetical question, but not anymore. The threat of day zero, that's the day the taps literally run dry, has become a terrifyingly real possibility for some of India's largest cities. With groundwater levels just plummeting and the rains getting more and more unpredictable, just relying on Mother Nature, well, that's a gamble the country just can't afford to take. And this number right here gets to the absolute heart of the problem. Just think about this imbalance. India has about 18% of the entire world's population, but it has access to only 4% of the world's freshwater resources. That huge, fundamental gap is the engine driving everything we are about to talk about. So when you have a crisis on that kind of scale, what happens next? A massive response. And in India, it has kicked off what you can only call a blue gold rush. It's a full-on race to invest, to build, and to capitalize on the creation of brand new water. Now let's follow the money, because it tells a really interesting story. By 2026, the market for just building desalination plants is pegged at almost $800 million. But then look at that other bar, wastewater treatment. That's a massive $3.27 billion market. So what does that tell you? The strategy isn't just about making new water from the sea. It's also about aggressively, and I mean aggressively, recycling every single drop we already have. Of course, a boom like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's being supercharged by these huge government initiatives like the Jal Jeevan mission and AMRUT 2.0. These programs are pouring billions of dollars into completely overhauling the country's water infrastructure. They're setting really clear goals for water access and recycling, and that creates a stable runway for major investment. And you can actually see this playing out on the stock market. We're seeing the rise of what people are calling blue stocks. These are publicly traded companies that specialize in water. You take a leader in the space, a company like VA Tech Wabog. Right now, they're sitting on an order book worth over 16,000 crore rupees. These are not small-time players. These are industrial heavyweights building the future of India's water. Okay, so you've got the money, you've got the government push, but what does all this actually look like on the ground? Well, it looks like concrete and steel. It looks like massive high-tech facilities that are, for all intents and purposes, water factories. What you're looking at here is basically a new coastal shield being built to protect India's biggest cities. We're seeing these giant desalination hubs emerge. Take Chennai, for example. It's rapidly becoming the desalination capital of India. The Perur plant there, just by itself, will churn out 400 million liters a day. Mumbai is building the Manori plant. You see similar huge projects all along Gujarat's coast. It's happening everywhere. And this gives you a sense of what we're talking about. These aren't just plants, they are sprawling industrial complexes. Remember that 400 MLD Perur plant we just mentioned? Once that thing is up and running, it's going to provide clean drinking water to over 2.2 million people. That is the scale we are dealing with. City-level solutions for a national-level problem. But it's not all about pulling water from the ocean. That's only half the story. The other huge pillar here is what's called urban recovery. See, cities are starting to realize that their wastewater isn't a liability you have to get rid of. It's actually a resource. You've got pioneers like Surat and Indore that are now treating their sewage to a really high standard and then selling it to industrial parks nearby. They're creating a brand new revenue stream from what used to be just waste. That's the circular water economy in action. And this is where things get really interesting. This whole shift is creating more than just drinking water. It's opening up brand new strategic frontiers, connecting water security to industrial growth and, believe it or not, even the green energy transition. So, in the country's industrial hubs, the government is pushing this incredibly aggressive policy. It's called Zero Liquid Discharge, or ZLD, and the goal is exactly what it sounds like. Industries are being told they have to recycle and reuse every single drop of water, leaving, well, zero liquid waste behind. It's a radical push for maximum efficiency.
And here's where it all starts to sound like science fiction. We are seeing this powerful new link between energy and water. For instance, the state-run power giant NTPC is planning a massive $21.6 billion green hydrogen project. And what's the key ingredient you need to make green hydrogen? Water. So they're going to use desalinated seawater, turning it into clean fuel. That's the energy-water nexus right there, a perfect synergy for a sustainable future.
Okay, but let's be real. Creating water basically out of thin air, or, well, out of the ocean, it's not simple. It comes with some pretty significant challenges, and it's really important to take a sober look at the hurdles that are still ahead. There are really two big hurdles everyone's trying to figure out. First, the main technology they use, reverse osmosis, needs a ton of energy, which means it costs a lot to run these plants. And second, the process creates this super concentrated salty waste product called brine. Figuring out how to dispose of this brine back into the ocean without messing up the marine ecosystem, that's a huge environmental challenge the industry is still working on. So, the big question is, how do you pay for these massive, really expensive projects? Well, the financial model itself is changing. Instead of the government having to foot the entire bill up front, we're seeing a shift to something called water as a service. Think of it like this. A private company comes in, builds and operates the plant, and the state just signs a long-term contract to buy a guaranteed supply of water. It takes the risk off the government and gives investors a steady return. And that really brings us to the big question at the end of all this. India is proving that if you have enough capital, the right technology, and the political will, you can solve for water scarcity. You can actually manufacture this life-giving resource. But as this blue gold rush gets faster and faster, the central question we're left with is this. What's the true long-term price, both environmental and economic, of guaranteeing a glass of water every time you turn on the tap? So some